Welcome to My Psychedelic Roots, a podcast of conversations with people from a broad swath of lived experience to explore their psychedelic beginnings or roots, what led them to start using psychedelics, what those early experiences were like, and how those roots have impacted their life's unfolding. My name is Amy Bartlett, and it is my hope that these stories, generously shared by my guests, offer perspective and insight into the lived reality of psychedelic experiencing. Please feel welcome to subscribe and follow to the show to get the latest conversations in your podcast feed. And you are always invited to share this episode with others if you feel inspired. And so, as always, whoever, wherever, and whenever you are, welcome. I'm glad you're here. In this episode, I have the pleasure of sitting down with my friend Robert Décarie, a local certified holotropic breathwork facilitator and a delightful human being. As we explore in our conversation together, after spending a gregarious but dissociated childhood in Montreal in the 1950s and 60s, and experiencing a dark night of the soul in his early 20s, Robert pivoted to study environmental sciences, and he had a 25-year career in wildlife management. However, in the mid-2000s, he readjusted the course of his life to deepen its meaning and chose to study to become a counselor, a path which also led him to eventually become a certified holotropic breathwork facilitator, a gift he has been offering to the Ottawa community since 2015. Robert also paints, sculpts, writes, and leads groups in forest wandering. I know Robert most of all as a caring friend, a gentle leader, and someone who moves through the world with enormous respect for others and for his own unfolding. In our conversation together, we walk through several decades that make up his psychedelic roots. From visiting Huatla de Jimenez, Maria Sabina's home, which he visited in the 1970s, to experimenting with ayahuasca in a couple of different settings, to finally experiencing what he considers to be his first true psychedelic experience a few years ago in a well-supported set and setting that allowed him to connect deeply with himself and to love. It was a pleasure to have the chance to sit down with Robert, to wend our way through his psychedelic roots, or what he calls his holotropic life. A reminder that this episode contains mentions of suicidality. This warning is meant to empower you with the knowledge that you need to make decisions about how and if you should consume this content. We invite you to practice self-care and do what feels right for you. And if you need support, please connect with someone who can help. Family and friends, professionals, or a crisis line. There are both Canadian and international recommendations in the show notes below. You are not alone, not in your pain, nor in your healing. And so with that, let's hear more about Robert's psychedelic roots. Robert, so great to have you here.
Thank you. Glad to be here too.
So as we move into conversation together today, before we jump in to talk a little bit about your psychedelic roots, what do you think it's important that people know about your background and your life today?
I'm 72, so not young anymore, but that age means that I grew up, I was born in the 50s, so I grew up in the 60s and 70s, where this psychedelic revolution certainly happened at that time. I had a life and professional trajectory quite meandering and quite diverse and without any plan, just following. I was a wildlife biologist for 20 some years, then had a sort of life transition time where I became a sort of counselor therapist and also a holotropic breathwork facilitator. I'm from Montreal originally, moved in this area. You see, and I'm touched just saying that. With coming from or pushed by an inner calling is not the word, but pushing. Something was pushing me here. So, and that's in a way related to my psychedelic roots or my holotropic life.
Mm. I love that. Yes, that variation on a theme. Yes, your holotropic life. Well, I'm glad that you ended up here in our community, and I'm really interested to hear a little bit about your story. So I wonder maybe we could go back into the 50s and 60s, into your childhood. Thinking back to your younger self before psychedelics and in that period, how would you describe your way of seeing the world?
Well, seeing me from now at that
Mm,
time, first I was the oldest of pack of six and live in the suburb of Montreal. Moved when I was five in a neighborhood where there was a lot of English speaking people around, so got immersed in a way or connected, so could certainly hear the language and
mhm,
start to learn it there. I was very active, very playful, and an organizer. I cannot play alone. I have to have a
mhm.
group of people to
Even
play
as a
with.
child.
Yeah, it started there and it never stops, never stopped. Also, I can say from now, after living and seeing things that I was in a sense dissociated. I was in a modality of being that was okay for then, but certainly cut from myself and some emotional matters.
Mm.
I had to draw a lot of attention at school. Often my desk was beside the desk of the teacher. Or I was in the hall that was put outside of the class because I was too. I loved making others laugh, and
Mhm.
so yeah,
It sounds like you were a very social child.
yes, yeah,
Mm.
and I was like that for until the early 20s, I would say.
What was your relationship to wonder or spirituality or even altered states of consciousness when you were a child? Did you have any connection with nature or with religion or spirituality?
No, yes and no. I was raised in a Catholic modality. My mother was very practiced, and more than that, she could have been a nun.
Wow.
So she had an inner life that was sort of rich, but also trapped into this the morality of the Catholics. On the other side, my father, okay, he agreed to let my mother control that part, but he was when we were going to church, he was dropping us there. He was going to the store, buy a newspaper, and he was reading the newspaper outside and talking
Hmm.
with those others that were outside. So I could say maybe that being in contact with the hard aspect of religion, especially on this sinful and stuff like that, around sexuality and other things, but also feeling or the death of my mother's being.
Hmm. How did you experience that, or how did you know that was happening?
I don't think I was conscious of that
Mm.
then. I can see now that it had an impact, and it still had an impact on my way even of living my spirituality.
Yes. So it sounds like as a child, spirituality wasn't something that was part of your conscious awareness or lived experience. There was a religious container, but your attunement or experience of your own spirit wasn't a big part of your childhood.
No, I was too much into playing and playing
Mhm.
hockey, playing soccer, playing baseball, playing,
Mm. Very embodied.
embodied and dissociated at the same time. So
Yes. I'm curious. So you mentioned you grew up in the 50s and 60s. Did you grow up in an environment where psychedelics were ever discussed, either positively or negatively?
Not as a child,
Mhm.
but certainly becoming a teenager. And so that's sort of in the 60s because it was around. My parents mentioned that, but as a sort of a so stay away from that. It's dangerous, but that's not more than that.
No.
No.
How did they show up for you? Did friends use them, or were you offered them ever?
Well, I was a fan of the Beatles. So in 67, when Sergeant Pepper came out, I was 14 and I
Mm,
could see that something was there. But again, it was out of reach. It's a bit later when maybe 16, 17, where it was around. It was around in my classmates. So this is when I started. But it essentially it was cannabis,
oh,
marijuana, and hashish, and that was about it at that time.
mhm,
Did it a lot, a lot. I was not stoned every day, but and it was at the beginning it was very enjoyable. At a time, I remember there's a college not too far from where I lived, and the park behind the college there was a rock festival, and I
mm,
remember having a great time over there in that kind of container with
mhm.
that kind of medicine in a way, and that kind of setting. I had friends who took LSD or mescaline, and but at the time I was afraid, so uh, I was attracted. I read Timothy Leary, and I was reading all those things, but and it was a moment where a lot of people were dropping school, going living in communes, and I was so attracted to that, but at the same time caught in my upbringing and my way of life and on the fence always, but not fully going that route at that time.
Mm. At that time. What about that felt interesting or attractive? That route?
Oh, there was so much happening, so much happening. There's just the music, Bob Dylan, the affirmation, the spiritual quest, people going to India. And so there was so much. At the same time, it was a bit outside,
Mm,
but still, I received all that energy, all that. It was my time. It was that moment where, at the age where all of that could influence me, I was there. So,
yes.
and it's much later that I had to go through again very meandering path before eventually, okay, this is my turn, my time. Not consciously, I could see that in retrospect.
Hmm. I imagine, the way you described your childhood and how you experienced yourself as a child as someone who was so social and gregarious and playful and also dissociated and embodied. That sounds like such a beautiful context and environment and mix of energy in which to feel alive and resourced to sort of be in it and be part of it.
Yeah, but there was another part of myself, another dimension that I didn't mention. Yes, I was playful and extrovert in that sense, and also I could very easily and frantically um, step back in a chair and read and be caught
Mm,
in that world. And I can see that for me, it was a way to isolate myself from being six in a house.
yes.
sometimes with a dog or a cat, or I needed my own privacy. So I could
Mm,
escape and at the same time be with parts of self or more in contact with parts of self that were repressed or dissociated in a way that I can see that now looking back at
mhm.
then. I didn't know that then, of course.
I'm glad that you were able to find spaces in such a busy household to titrate out and to sort of take steps back.
Yeah.
Mm,
And at the same time, that also came from my mother. She was the one who was bringing me to the library, I guess we can say
mhm.
in English, and coming back with books. And so I was supported, or we were all six of us. Well, not all, but five out of six were, and still are now
Wow.
into reading and being in that world.
Mm. So coming back to your psychedelic thread, following that a little bit.
Yes, that's the podcast.
As we move through your childhood and your teenage years, you mentioned that you felt gregarious and this sort of joyfulness and this sociality, and things changed for you in your 20s. Was that connected to your psychedelic roots, or is it part of you moving in that direction?
But it would have been, I was just thinking, was it connected with my psychedelic roots? It would have happened even without pot and hashish, and that at some point brought me in much darker places, less fun, more dark. So I got so when I mentioned early 20s, it was more the late teens where at a point where I need to find what I will do in life. And there were all sorts of issues regarding who I am, what it is being a man. It was all stuck, and I was stuck, and that brought me into darker and darker places. Of course, I followed the trend of the time after my, let's say, high school, or here in Quebec we have a cégep, which is between the high school and university. I stopped going to school and I went up north in the James Bay area, and then in on Woodavik to work in Kudruak, and then after that I went to Europe to travel and hitchhike. And it's after that that when I came back, okay, where am I and where am I going? That I went through a deep existential life crisis, I would say, that lasted maybe a year and a half. That resulted with two suicidal attempts. And in that time, I was still smoking the pot and so on, but it was only bringing me in those places. This is, I think, where I had my first holotropic or non-ordinary experience, and that was not coming from any substance. I remember I think I went to see someone did tarot to meet, but I was in the bus and I was sitting and my head was down and I was saying to myself, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And so distressed, so desperate. And then there was this feminine voice that came from within that said, go toward nature.
Yeah.
And I was in the bus just crying with my head saying, yes, 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 yes. And that starts to bring me on that route to spirituality, my own experiential spirituality. And eventually that brought me to become a biologist, a wildlife biologist, and then going to nature. So how can I go? when I grew up in Montreal. So that was the way. And of course, I was still interested. I was reading Carlos Castaneda,
Mm-hmm.
and that sort of attracted me a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And in 78, I was 25. And that's 3 years after those suicidal attempts and so on. I was involved in environmental groups, organizing demonstration against nuclear and all sorts of things at the time. And I decided to go to Mexico just to be carried by Castaneda over there. And how did I find the place? I don't remember the logistic, but I went to Huautla de Yemines, where Maria Sabina had been,
Wow.
and bought some mushroom over there and tried the mushrooms. But that was a very, very hard and not good experience.
Do you mind if I ask you some questions about it?
Oh, yes.
Did you go to Mexico deciding that you were going to look for mushrooms?
There was probably, yes, it was probably some of that. A friend of mine was supposed to come with me. He was supposed to join me there in Mexico. He never came because he
Mm.
met the person who is still now his wife. So he was sort of doing his own thing over there. And so I went on the plan alone. If he would have been there, probably we wouldn't go. We wouldn't have gone, I would think. But what I didn't know, I didn't know about Maria Sabina. I didn't know about the population of the village being pissed off by
Mhm.
people like me coming there. And I was in the market and I couldn't see from where it was coming, but people were throwing fruits at me. It was not a good setting. So, not at all, not a good container. And in that little hotel where I took it alone, so no sitter, and some people, I could hear people at my door. I tried to lock my door. I was telling I shouldn't, I cannot fall asleep because maybe I'll be ripped off. And then being sick, going back in a bus, being sick for a couple of days. But there was an angel. I met an angel over there. It's all part of this inner healer work. Hey, so I was in Oaxaca before. That's the capital of the province. Before going to the village, and I met someone on the street, a Mexican man in his 50s. And I told him what I wanted to do, and he tried to discourage me, and he wanted to show me things in the city to interest me in ordinary things. But I went, and when I came back, all sick and lost, there he was. And he brought me to his place, and I could stay there. And he brought me to see a nurse who took care of me.
Wow.
So someone was with me in that old journey. But
Yeah.
and you'll see that it'll become a theme of my psychedelic or holotropic process. It's the necessity of a safe container.
Yes.
So many of my first experiences were not in a safe container with the results I had. So that's a lesson, quite a lesson I got that time.
I'm so glad that you had some care and support when you returned. That means a
Yeah,
lot.
by such a simple man.
Mhm. I'm curious, Robert, why did you want to take mushrooms?
I was sort of naive, and I'll meet Don Juan or the equivalent, a teacher, or I was just going there, and that's the container, the setting, and the set of the person who decides to go in. So my set was not top. It was sort of okay, remnants from my youth. Okay, let's go and do it. So
Right. Right.
still young, 25.
Mhm. And why did you choose Guatala de Jimenez?
Oh, that's why I don't remember. How did I find that place? Probably I read it in some magazines for EPs. I don't know. I found the place.
It sounds like it was a really difficult first experience in coming out and receiving that care. It sounds like that was one of the main lessons.
Yes.
Were there any lessons from the hard parts, the scary parts?
I think the setting was so bad that I was just resisting.
Yes.
I couldn't be safe and let go. And who knows what was sold to me, given how they consider those coming to that village, those gringos coming.
Yes. So you had a very difficult first experience and you received some care and support and compassion in the aftermath of that. Sounds like it was quite a big experience. What made you want to ever have an experience again?
It took me a while after that.
I bet.
So that's 78. Took me 30 years after. And my introduction to was with holotropic breathwork. And in fact, when I started the training in Taos, New Mexico, I was back in the late 60s, and it was that kind of community that was there that so attracted me so much then. And so being exposed to non-ordinary states of consciousness, which is with the breath, and knowing about LSD and other substances that, so this is what brought me to, okay, let's try it again.
Why did you want to try it again? Was it the same curiosity that led you to Mexico the first time, or was it something different?
I think it's the same thing. It was not worded in the same ways. I was maybe a little, well, not even. I was about to say I was a bit more sophisticated, but not at all. I was. I think I really wanted to have a spiritual experience. That was what I wanted, and it happened also in breath work.
Mhm.
And during the training, I remember I was seeing others in the sharing groups, and judged myself or my experiences as being ordinary. They were not. They were not at all. But I had that expectation or wish, and I remember the first hour of music is very rhythmic to support the breath, and I breathed like hell, and at one point I was lying on my back, and I talked to God. I said, God, I'm ready. Give me give me something, an experience. And what I've seen, my eyes closed. There was a wall, and there was a face of a woman with the same voice as this other woman when I was 20. And she told me, I'm working on it. And it was bliss hearing that. And I knew that someone is working on it, but it's not now, and it's not the way I want. So the feminine goddess,
Mhm.
I was in good hand.
Yes. It sounds like you had, even the first time, but also subsequently, you have so much trust in that voice. I'm so glad that you were open to hearing it.
Back to the psychedelic track. I tried ayahuasca. Then that was my second one after the mushrooms in Mexico, and that's 30 years after.
Mhm.
So someone brought me to the Santo Daime in Montreal, and I had the experience of ayahuasca there. A better setting than the first time, but for me, not an adequate setting for the person I am. especially given that I had already started the training with breathwork and with the sitter. And so I was sick a lot, spent a lot of time in the bathroom. And I tried to follow the ceremony that was sort of very ritualistic. So standing up, singing, and at the same time having it was intense. I was afraid. I was afraid. Like, again, I didn't feel safe.
Hmm.
But the following day was exquisite. Sort of the afterglow and being at home and integrating and just being with that sense of well-being and
Hmm.
so that's the I guess what I caught. But again, a lesson that no, setting is not for me.
Sorry, it sounds a lot like the mushroom ceremony in the sense that it was very hard and not for you. And after the experience, you had so much support and comfort and insight.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, rough experiences usually give something at the end.
It seems there's a consistent lesson for you of there's support there and there's care and safety.
Mm. So, and I'm not there yet at my first real one.
Mm.
So there's two others before that. I'll treat them jointly. It's again two ayahuasca experiences, this time in New York State with a shaman over there. Again, for me, a setting that was not adequate. All people lying in this shaman there, and a few people guardians. And there I was really sick, um, really, really sick. And at one point, I spent, I don't know, there was a sitter. The guy came with me too, because in the bathroom in the basement, sitting there, vomiting and not able to move. And at one point, the guy stayed with me. I was just naked there. And at one point, he went upstairs, called a shaman. Shaman came down, blow smoke into my face, and he said, "Bring him in the other room." And so there was a sort of a rest room with chairs. And I just sat there for a while. There, I was at one point certain that I was dying. I
Mm.
was dying. And when I was on the toilet, there was tiny angels, like those on some Middle Age or Renaissance paintings, and they were just hovering around me. And at one point, the image of my partner then and of my two daughters came. I didn't die there, and of course, uh, when after sitting in that place for a while, I was able to climb the stairs and go back into the hall where everybody was. And I was able to lie down there. I was coming down on the medicine. And this is the moment of the ceremony where people sing. They sing and so it was beautiful then. At the very end, and when it all finished, and there was this I talked to shaman and I said, "Thank you, gracias." And he said, when next time you come, if you come back. But that was not the end of it, because then there was a night I couldn't sleep all night. Then it was time to leave because there was another ceremony with other people coming. Finally decided to take my car, but I was not, and I got lost. And I finally find the highway, and you had to pay, and I forgot to pay. And good, there was no policeman that eventually caught me, and I was able to drive back home. And even when I got back home, I didn't sleep for the rest. It was a long, 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 long experience. and it was a bit similar the second time too. And so, so that was in 2015. And it's only in 2020 that I had my first good experiences with a single sitter in a safe place
Mhm.
with someone very, very good. So
I'm so glad you got to finally find the setting for you that gave you that safety.
the safety and the therapeutic process, in a way, for the psychological dimension of it,
Mhm.
the ego repair, but also a way to have a more complete spiritual experience, and that that is still with me.
Were you nervous to try
Oh
again?
yes, I'm always each time I'm afraid.
Yes.
Each time. So I have immense. It's the fear of God. It's a terrible fear. Uh,
Mhm.
so huge respect, fear, and trust. So I have to find the right combination.
Yes. When did you realize that this ceremony was what you were always looking for?
I wouldn't word it this way.
Mhm. How would you word it? Yeah.
It's not what I was always looking for. I'm not even sure I got yet whatever is inside is looking for. I had what I needed to go deep inside safely and meet with parts of self and in ways that are not possible otherwise. And it's a work in process. It's not, again, so synchronistic with what I was also going through in my life. So I didn't get what I was always looking for. I got what I needed. I think I got what I needed the other times too. Said, you're going there too crazy. Take some time before going there again.
Mm. Mm. That's a good way of putting it. So in this first experience where you got what you needed to go deep, what did you learn?
um, well, so much information on simultaneously my current life, past events, my relationships, my daughters, the people around me, my trajectory, confirmation on validation of who I am, what I am, and but also real work on places that were stuck and that are sometimes still stuck. Old wounds, old patterns that were put in place to protect and defend the wounds. I remember, and with a sense of humor too, in a way. I could see in that ceremony that at one point I decided to say inside of me, decided I'm not receiving your love. There was something, I guess there was something of me that was not seen, not met, and so I'm not receiving your love. And that sort of block. And receiving love has been a challenge. So the life pattern of yes, wanting love, but as soon as it's given, it's not received. So I could see the origin of that in this life, but also what I was going through in my life with the person I am with. Yeah, I could see that I could receive. I mean, she was and is giving giving me so much love. So it was a sort of combination. And I remember at one point, the medicine was saying, "Are you receiving love?" No, I don't think you are. And then I was sort of shaken like in a laundry thing, you know. Then it stopped. Are you? No, I don't think so. And then I was able to, in that ceremony, to receive the love of my parents as it was given. And also, I mean, to see the transgenerational patterns that, I mean, it was just downloaded on. So it was a lot. It was a lot.
Did you encounter in that first official and safe journey, was the goddess there? Was that voice there?
No,
No.
no.
Mhm.
She came later, another ceremony.
Hmm.
But I think she was embodied in my sitter.
Hmm. That's beautiful, Robert.
So again, the right setting.
I'm so glad that you had that safety and that support and that witnessing and that love and that you received it. Wow.
Some of it, I mean, I had to be shaken a lot,
Yes,
but it's still a work in progress.
of course. Of course.
It's not done.
Yes.
I mean, there's so many layers, so many histories, so much time, but I know that it's possible.
Yes. And you keep trusting that and you keep taking steps forward. I really admire the path you've taken and how hard it was at each step, and yet how much you honored that calling and knowing that what you needed was there and you could look for it. That's such deep trust in yourself and what you know. I don't know if that's how you experience it, but that's in part what I hear in your unfolding. It's how much you trust yourself and trust what you know. Mm. So, as we begin to wrap up our conversation today, Robert, what do you think is the most important lesson that you've learned from your explorations with psychedelics?
Oh, yes. I think I mentioned it a few times.
Mhm.
Usually they talk about three components: the set, the setting, and the dose. So if the set is good, if the setting is good, the dose will be okay. So for me, that's it. And in fact, what I'm offering, holotropic breathwork, is a setting. This is the most important.
And perhaps because of all of your experiences and explorations with setting and not finding the one that worked for you, you're perhaps uniquely qualified to be offering such safe settings in which people can encounter themselves.
Oh, you should come and verify.
I'm working up to it, my friend. I know. Given your unfolding and how you've navigated and moved through your psychedelic roots, I wonder if you have any advice for people who are curious about this path or who are walking this path and are inspired by how you've been navigating it.
Mm. I would say honor your fears,
Mm,
find your pace, and find a good sitter.
mhm.
It'll be okay.
That's beautiful, Robert. I'm so glad that you found all of those things and that your unfolding is such a gift to the community and that you share so much of yourself and so much of that safe space with others. Your offerings with the holotropic breathwork are so sacred and so beautiful. I'm so grateful to you for them.
Thank you. And thank you for inviting me to this podcast and going through it. I have that feeling of walking home.
Hmm. I'm so pleased. Robert, it was such an honor. I'm so grateful to hear your story. So grateful that you were open to sharing it with us. Thank you.
Thank you.